Welcome to the Leviathan Proportions podcast. This podcast is all about this week's headline news. We have each person show up having read 3 different news articles from 3 different news publications. We will talk about the differences in the articles that we have brought to the discussion and share our own opinion on them. So, join us as we bring you this unique take on the week's headlines. This is
Thanks for
Leviathan
joining me again
Proportions.
This week I have Zach Muessel along with me, Ben Addison. Zach, hello.
Hello, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
Doing very well. It's been an interesting week, I would say, kind of news-wise.
Oh yeah. Been very interesting. A lot of things going on around the world, but mainly we're going to focus on the U.S. To start off, we have the Saugus. I'm not sure. Do you know how to pronounce that?
I haven't really been able to pronounce the school, so I've kind of felt really bad about this, but I just call it the South California High School.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I read that it was in Santa Clara is around where where this high school is. So that's kind of the best locational proxy we can give you. But the story is a 16-year-old boy actually pulled out a handgun out of his backpack and started to shoot some of his other students. Apparently 5 total were injured. 2 were killed before he then turned the gun on himself, shooting himself. He was then taken to the hospital in grave condition, but then later on the Washington Post had reported that he had actually died while in the hospital. So very gruesome scene. Overall, kind of just doesn't, it's in the context of all these shootings, It's the same stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of been a pattern throughout the last couple of years, and probably since we've been alive ourselves, that it's just kind of mass shootings are kind of a regular thing in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
But this one was like, I heard about it, and I was kind of paying attention in the beginning because I've seen the live wires we have at work and everything. And I just was waiting for a motive to come forward. I was like, was this an ex-girlfriend that he was targeting? Were these classmates, like particular people? No motive so far. It just seems like it's just kind of a random onslaught of violence, and then he turned the gun on himself. It just seems like one of those situations.
It really is weird in that regard, and I want to preface this. When he says work, we both work at Channel 3, 3 News Now, KMTV. So if we ever reference, we saw this at work, we did this at work, we're referencing we saw it at a news station. So just preface there. But yeah, no, it's absolutely crazy. Like the fact that there's just no clear motive. All of these shootings have had one thing in common, regardless of political affiliations or anything, because all of them have been different through the different shootings. But one thing has stayed the same. The shooter has wanted the publicity with the actual shooting.
Oh, definitely.
They wanted the popularity, and they wanted to be, most importantly, alive when it happened. So it's really strange that if he killed himself, that he didn't leave anything behind to really give, why did he do it?
Right, which kind of leads me to believe that this was just kind of a rash decision on their part.
Mm-hmm.
So if I had to guess, it was an ill decision made by kind of a completely irrational person.
Yeah, I mean, my question is, how did this 16-year-old child, get a hold of a handgun? That's absurd to me that they can do that. I have had a dad personally that owns firearms since I could even remember. But every single time before I was even 16, didn't even know where he kept the guns at. He kept them away from me. And then eventually he got a safe to put them in. So I couldn't even get access to them even when I didn't know where they were. So it's like, how do all these gun owners not do anything similar at all and just leave their guns lying around?
No, yeah, and especially when you look at the context of it being California, which is one of the stricter, gun law states. It's not like this was a Texas or a Midwestern state where it's just kind of more acceptable, I guess, or more common that these guns are unlocked and easily accessible.
That's what confused me, because I'm pretty sure California just has a straight up ban on firearms. You're not even allowed to.
I think handguns, for sure.
Okay, yeah.
I know. Chicago, New York are the ones I believe that have kind of a complete handgun ban because that's what's commonly used in most crimes.
Yeah, because they're easy to conceal, easy to carry, easy to buy, easy to get, like
Yeah.
easy to do anything.
Like
with.
any burglary, and then you kind of look at the context of mass shootings, and that's usually like a rifle. But no, it's tragic nonetheless. But I'm hoping that the investigators can like pull a motive out of this.
Yeah,
to maybe
and
figure out what's going on.
This personally, even like when we come to these when these events happen, the usual script or what everyone follows along is we need more gun bans. And sure, I do 100% agree with that. I think there are things that we have that are still legal as firearms that really shouldn't be, mainly military-style rifles. But this was another shooting that was done with a pistol. And there was the one that was done down in Texas that was done with a shotgun and a pistol. Or a handgun, as I should say. So it's like, those don't really stop that. So obviously the problem isn't military-style rifle that the press keeps trying to go to. It really is just guns in general. Yeah,
it's kind of any and all guns can be used in these situations. Like, it could be like a Virginia Tech where there was pistols involved. There could be like the movie shooter in a movie theater. Yeah, I'm thinking Aurora, Colorado. And then, it could be any variety. So it's kind of... I really in my head haven't come up with like a one shoe or like a
one size fits all.
Yeah, one
policy.
Size fits all kind of solution to this because
and I don't think there is. I really don't think, because America is a very unique situation in that we have firearms protected by our Bill of Rights. And these were the first 10 rights that our founders came out with that weren't originally a part of the Constitution, by the way. I want to make this clear. The Bill of Rights was added later to the Constitution. So technically, then in themselves are 10 amendments which are repealable, and this has happened before. But with those, I always, in any of those amendments, would air a lot of caution into the side of trying to do anything with those amendments. Because whenever you prohibit those things, like journalism and freedom of speech has been one of those, another amendment that's usually attacked and talked about. You can't change the First Amendment, but you can make alterations. The press has different rights than what a free individual does. So that doesn't mean that you can't necessarily change them. It just means you have to be careful when you do. And it's very difficult to do so.
Right, and especially when you consider that another leader will be taking the reins every 4 years in this country.
4 to 8,
yeah, potentially 4 to 8, depending on if they get reelected and everything. So I've heard one person put that theory for, and that really changed my idea on politics because picture someone you don't like having the ability to change your way of life. And it's kind of like, it kind of slows your thought process down of like, let's not be reactionary. Let's be proactive in this. So, no, as much as I want to see situations like these stop, it's such like a complicated issue because even if there's an outright ban, which probably will take the percentage down dramatically, but there'll still be instances where there'll still be attacks because these toxic mentalities and mindsets will still exist.
I also want to be air on the side of caution. I, as working in the news, have noticed the press use this specific statistic a lot, and they use the total mass shootings in a year. That is a very ingenuine statistic because, like, I don't know the exact percent, but the majority of those cases are actually gang violence, where they're just gang attacks happening. You know, when you hear about those happening, like we have them out here in Omaha. We had a woman die in a shootout in the old market last year or the year before, if I remember correctly. So these things aren't just isolated at schools or these fanatical, like, shootings that we see on the press where they had a big ideology behind them. Most of those mass shootings that you see in those statistics are just those gang violence attacks. And prohibiting and getting rid of firearms isn't going to stop that because they're already getting those firearms illegally. So that's not going to stop them. So firearm bans will only really possibly stop those fanatical approaches and mass shootings.
It will lessen the ability of someone who is kind of crazy enough to be able to have access to It's basically cutting off one of the streams of a million.
Yeah. So it's a very complicated issue, and I don't think there's any one silver bullet that, even a bunch of college students could really figure out and professionals could figure out. It's a complex thing that's going to take our entire nation and really get together, and instead of attacking each other, talking about it, just having an open dialogue between each other and really getting down to the meat and bones of everything, or meat and potatoes of everything, and getting to that. But talking about food, it's a good transition to the next article from ABC News this time, and it's police arresting a suspect in the fatal stabbing over the Popeyes chicken sandwich. Now, this is a meme in of itself.
Now, before we get to the actual stabbing death, have you tried the sandwich yet?
I have not. And the only reason why is because of these stories.
After this recording, you gotta go, put on a bulletproof vest if you have to. Go to your local Popeyes and just get this sandwich, because it did change my life. I will.
It did change my life.
I will say.
I'm not too sure how I feel about that. It's a chicken sandwich, guys. Come on.
I feel like I'm hyping it up a little too much, but seriously,
just try it.
I have not had a chicken sandwich better.
Okay, I'll have to get around to it eventually somehow. But so the story itself is about a Maryland man who is wanted and has now been arrested. His name being Rico McLean, 30 of District Heights, Maryland. He essentially, what happened was he was sitting in line for one of those Popeyes chicken sandwiches, and if you have been to one of these Popeyes lately, they're really busy, long ass lines, and in places where there's a lot of people, those lines get really excessive. Apparently, there was another man who cut in front of McLean, another customer. They're not releasing his name in this article by ABC, but another man cut in front of him. They got in a bit of an altercation within the line. They both agreed to take it outside to actually, probably full-on brawl is what I'm assuming both of them are thinking.
As you should.
Yes.
Just don't fight in the restaurant.
Yeah, don't fight in the restaurant. At least go outside if you're going to do it. But then McLean allegedly pulled out a knife and then stabbed the man once and then proceeded to immediately run away. Not grabbing his Popeyes chicken sandwich, which he was there in the first place for. So
I've been cut off multiple times in a drive-thru. And I've seen people get cut off in a drive-thru.
Mm-hmm.
In the actual store, I haven't been physically cut in line.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been that mad that I'm gonna stab someone over a sandwich.
Yeah, and getting cut in line. He's one person that you have to wait a little bit longer for now, and you're gonna make that big of a fuss about it.
Oh yeah. It's the last time I remember. I was in McDonald's and it was 2 a.m. or something, and it just McDonald's at 2 a.m. is always a place that is just packed.
Mm-hmm.
And then as this car was going forward, they couldn't actually physically move their car because of how backed up the line is.
Mm-hmm.
And I just see this guy laying on his horn, and then he just peels out and does a couple donuts and just leaves. So I'm like, what is it with... So you're going to get that mad, and then you're just going to leave without your food.
Yeah.
Because, of course, if I'm going to get upset in a fast food line, I'm going to get my food.
Yeah, I'm there to get my food. I'm not going to leave until I have my food in my hands. That's...
Yeah, that's the whole reason I'm mad, is because I don't have my food as quickly as I want it.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, oh, man. Oh, okay, so, sorry, reading further into the article, the man was identified who was stabbed. He was 29-year-old Kevin Tyrell Davis of Oxon Hill, Maryland. He did suffer a single stab wound and was rushed to the hospital, and he did die soon after. So this is a murder trial. It is not a attempted murder. It is a full-on, he did kill him, which is, the whole headline, fatally stabbing. But, yeah, it's just bizarre. You could get that mad over a chicken sandwich.
Yeah, it's just... It's ridiculous. It's just, you need to calm down. You'll get your food. Popeye's customer service, it's not known for its customer service either, so don't expect it so quick.
Yeah, this is not Chick-fil-A, guys. I know all y'all are expecting it's my pleasure and really fast service and 2 lanes of checkouts. That's because not Popeyes, Chick-fil-A has been making bank for a while now, so they can afford those type of things. Popeyes is not.
I actually got uncomfortable at Chick-fil-A for that reason, because I'm someone who's always been Popeyes, KFC, Walmart, so I don't expect customer service.
Yeah.
And when I got it, I was like, what is this person doing?
Yeah, what is happening here? Why is this the case? But
Not just throwing your food at me.
Yeah, just throw your food at me. Well, moving on now to the last article of the week. Apparently, vaping illnesses cases are back on the rise. We're up to 2,172, says the CDC.
Boy.
So this, if you have been following along on this trail of stories and fun stuff, the CDC originally was just like, vaping, just strictly vaping, is causing these issues. And a lot of people were getting like a bunch of lung problems and like really bad cases of it. But now they're saying through a vitamin E has, oh no, it's not saying though. Vitamin E has essentially been targeted as the cause of it all.
Yeah, it's
like,
the causation. It's this illegal, well, not illegal, but a kind of a black market type. You're not supposed to buy this.
Yeah, so that's something else. But the vitamin E is, I don't know if that's like even supposed to be in vapes, from my understanding.
Not the ones that are made and bottled, kind of like
in
like an actual vape shop in like kind of
yeah.
a mass produced sense.
Yeah, no.
Okay. But when it's kind of a more black market, and then you have the THC and everything.
Yeah, they do mention
it's kind
that.
of a combination of chemicals that I'm guessing it's. I haven't done super amount of research into this because I don't vape anymore. So I was like giving it up anyway.
Yeah, I used to vape a little bit every now and again too. So that was what like kind of struck my interest in it. But also I know a lot of people do it. And it was like for a very long time, so it was this healthy alternative. And I think even that in of itself is a genuine, not necessarily distruth. It is truthful because it is better than smoking. Like, you can't deny that. We can see the short-term effects of them both, but we don't know the long-term effects of vaping. We don't know if the long-term effects are worse than cigarettes.
Yeah, it's been like 10 years since this became popular.
Yeah, and I mean, if we remember when, well, you and I don't remember this because we weren't alive when this happened, but when cigarettes first came out, they didn't know the dangers of them.
Oh no.
They were popping them like they were the candy cigarettes that you can buy down at a gas station. Like, they didn't think twice about it. Like, everyone was doing it. It was on TV, it was in the movies, everyone was doing it. So
there were even doctors who were saying that, oh, this is a good stress reliever, and just kind of there was wide misconceptions about it, which
and that whole stress relieving thing is still something I've had people that I know who smoke cigarettes will still accredit to. And I'm like, no, that's not what's happening. You're actually just feeling your addiction lessen for a little while to the nicotine, and then that stress that you feel is your nicotine addiction. It's not actual stress. So if anything, you're adding stress to your life by smoking cigarettes. So if you're using that as an excuse to stay on cigarettes, please stop and get off of them. But nevertheless, they do in this article talk about how the CDC found the evidence of the synthetic form of vitamin E, so it's not even the natural form. So that's even worse in of itself. And they found it out of 29 of the 29 samples that they had. So, and they were extremely high levels too.
Oh,
so it sounds like these black market, and they do talk about how these are likely coming from. These are THC canisters that they're getting on the street or got from friends. Actually, what's really happening is, those Facebook ads, you kind of scroll through and you kind of see like this Wish thing, and it's like these super cheap products. Yeah, that's from China, and that's what these high schoolers are doing. They're scrolling through their Facebook, their Twitter, and all this, and then they're getting these very directed ads by China on these social media platforms that are trying to sell these vape, cartridges, and they're like, oh, that's really cheap. That's much cheaper than I can get anywhere here. And of course, being teenagers, they don't think about where this is coming from, what's in it, why is it so cheap? Like, that should be the first dinger to something's wrong here.
Right.
Is the fact that they're so cheap. But of course, they're kids, and they're not really, teenager kids. They're not really thinking about that. They're just thinking about, oh, my friends are doing it, so I should do it too.
Well, yeah, and that it's super cheap. You kind of get a buzz off of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And I would say the real vaping crisis kind of started, I think it was like as I was leaving high school.
Mm-hmm.
It really picked up because that's when we heard about Juuls, which were really small compared to like the big mods that like there were a couple people in my high school who would like actually have like the mods in school.
Yeah.
So easy to get caught with it.
Mm-hmm.
But the jewels are like so small and you can stick them anywhere. And
yeah.
But
literally
those
be
are
in your
like
pocket.
3 times like the amount of nicotine.
I've
is
hit.
normal.
Once I stopped vaping, I hit one of those because my friend had it, and they were just like, "Oh, do you want to try this?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll try it." And they'll be like, "Be careful," and I like hit it, and I was like, "Holy!" I felt the nicotine in that one.
Yeah, it's just like it's a head rush like immediately. So I don't like the jewel for that reason because
that's also like the nicotine is what it gets you addicted to it, and it's loaded with that. So that's really bad, especially for teenagers who are very, very vulnerable to that type of stuff. But in September, apparently, the federal health officials announced that they were going to ban e-cigarette flavors, including the mint and menthol. I don't know why they're going after menthol, because my knowledge of menthol is it tastes like dirt. Like, it does not taste good. It is not something a teenager is going to get.
It's like menthol cigarettes. I think those are like minty, but
yeah, it's just
I've
not heard anything good from menthol. So I don't know if that's gonna help them in any way, shape, or form. I mean, kids smoke weed anyway, and it doesn't have flavor to it. If anything, it has an earthy flavor to it from all that. So it's just like I trying to ban the flavoring itself is not going to fix the problem. You should probably ban the jewel pod itself, because that thing is the real problem.
Or at least like regulate it so it's not like super high amount.
Well, but the problem is the black market, so obviously regulations probably aren't really going to help there. So.
Right. So
I think comes down to education at that point, just telling these teens what these things are, why people are getting sick, and stop denying what the cause is. Because it wasn't until literally this article that thing came out this week or last week that the CDC was finally saying this is because of black market cartridges. Before they were just saying it's just straight up vaping.
Yeah, it's the pods that you're buying at the gas. No,
it wasn't. It was
because there would be a lot more adults with this same problem.
Yeah. That's what I really saw and found fascinating at first when I heard it, and was like, why is that the case? But then once the black market came out, I really understood it. But it was really strange that literally only teenagers and college students were getting it. So
well, I would even say. I don't know if you remember, but when K2 was going around like universities, this is kind of what this reminds me of also, because that was like synthetic marijuana that was legal, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Like it was being battled in the state legislature, I believe.
Yeah.
So, you can't get arrested for having this, so it's like a legal alternative to marijuana, and just people were getting so sick and overdosing, and just all sorts of horrible things were happening.
Oh yeah,
but it's all because. Yeah, this situation, I don't really see it fixing itself, because you can't really fix people's need for vices. You can just try and make them safer.
Yeah, and I mean, we can also try to perform rehabs, and I think that's what the U.S. does worse, is rehabbing people that have these situations. We're okay with it when it comes to alcohol, and we've done a relatively good job. I mean, when it comes to alcohol or any vice, really, it's really hard to wean somebody off of it or get them, out of that situation, because normally you really have to do in order to achieve that is get them away from the triggers that are making them do it. Usually it's something that makes these people latch on to these things, like cigarettes and stress. If someone's really stressed out and they get a cigarette and they feel that relief for the first time, that relief is truly there, but then that gains that addiction. So you have to get them away from those vices, and that usually requires them getting away from work. And you and I know how hard A, it is to get off of work, and B, how hard it is to be able to get a chunk of time off of work for your own mental health or health in general. Right. So.
And especially with I feel like our attitude is more so, cold turkey stop. Like, you can just get off of it. The best thing you can do is just have that complete withdrawal from it. Yeah. But especially, I would say with alcohol, it's kind of like that's something you don't want to do, because you can have severe health effects. Yeah, and that's what they do in those rehab centers, is they'll occasionally try to get you off it, wean it, but some don't. Some really don't. There's a lot of regulating that needs to be done in the health field in general, let alone, rehab centers and stuff like that. So
A lot of stuff's got to happen there, but apparently the patients also, the symptoms that they've been reporting, they gasp for air, they cough, have high fevers, extreme fatigue, and then gastrointestinal problems. And then many of them have been left with irreversible lung damage. And apparently one of the patients, a 17-year-old boy in Michigan, needed a double lung transplant.
Oh, that's
Not
right.
a one, two.
Yeah, double.
Both of his lungs had to be replaced because of vaping. Holy crap. The damage that could be caused by this. Just be careful out there, people. Oh.
Yeah.
All right. Well, nevertheless, thank you for joining us for this week's Leviathan Proportions. I appreciate you joining me this week, Zach.
No, thank you for having me.
It was very fun, and we'll go ahead and see you guys next time.
Thanks for listening to Leviathan Proportions. Make sure to join us next time when we do this all over again. Until then, stay informed.